Raspberry Pi. I think you have to be living under a rock to not recognize what one of these are. If you are a tech or you're into technology in any way, shape, or form, or you are into any retro gaming or any type of gaming in general, you know what one of these are. That said, if you are into gaming, you probably also have the connotation that these things have become just these hodgepodge 3 million ROM emulation boxes that you find on Facebook Marketplace being sold for $200-$300, which is outrageous because everyone should be able to roll their own. And with that said, there's also things about, lag and, how the overhead and the speed of the emulation and RetroPie project and all that. But I want to show you, hopefully with this video, that these devices do not have they are not as bad as they've been led to believe. There is ways of getting very low latency lag and being able to play on devices like CRTs. So let me show you what I mean. Alright, so Raspberry Pis. These devices have been known all through the community as the meme answer of why don't you just build a Pi, right? Anytime someone or a company is going to release some sort of retro collection on the Switch, or someone puts up a picture of an expensive game for Neo Geo or NES or Super Nintendo, someone will go, why would I spend that amount of money when I could just build a Pi? And to that, I say, yeah, they're right. Why would I spend $300 on a copy of Earthbound when I could, with very gray legality, play it for free on a Raspberry Pi in high definition on my HD TV? And yeah, they're right. But that said, is the retro community, there's more to just playing the games, right? That said, I really hope that most retro gaming is about playing the games and experiencing some of these older games, those fantastic pieces of video game art from the past in a way that you can enjoy. And it doesn't matter. I will never tell someone that they can't use a Raspberry Pi for retro gaming. If this is what you have and this is what you can afford or get, then please, by all means, build one of these. Put your ROMs on it, plug it into your TV, and play your games. That's what these are for. But for the enthusiasts, these have gotten kind of a bad rap. And the answer that you now get is, why would I build one of these lag devices? And again, this is a Raspberry Pi 2, so yeah, this isn't the best example. I have a Raspberry Pi 4 right here, but this thing has got something special on it. And it is a RGB hat by the Recall Box team. And I will be talking about this on a future video. I have not gone through any testing with this one yet, outside of me just kind of building it and putting it together and running Recall Box on it just to test it out. But I haven't actually done any major testing on it, because this one I think is going to be not the best choice. It's halfway there. There is another project that I'll be talking about that is infinitely better, I think, right now. I mean, in my opinion, I might be wrong later on when I get to play around with this. But for now, this one I'm going to set aside. This is a Raspberry Pi 4, like I said. The answer that most people will say is, well, you should build a Mister. And to that answer, I would say, sure, if you're an enthusiast and you can tell lag, you can feel the lag, you're susceptible to delay, then yes, please go and build a Mister. This is one of 3 Mister boxes that I have in my household. I have one on my main TV, I have this one that goes into my little arcade room, and then I have a Mr. Cade in my Astro City, which I love. I love this project. I think everything that the developers and the team for the Mr. Project has done for retro has been amazing. The argument here would be that there are things that some of the developers and people that make the cores have done to even help emulation, right? A good example is you have people like Hotego, who has been working on delidding, decapping a lot of these chips and boards and going through schematics and kind of reverse engineering some of these chips, and has actually fixed bugs that have been in MAME for years. And because of that, he gives his information to the MAME team. The MAME team then fixes it, and emulation is better because of this. There should be no infighting between these two things. Right now, this project is definitely the more expensive one to get into. As of the making of this video, the price of a Nano, if you can find one, is $210 directly from Jurassic with $41 shipping. So you're looking at $250 just for the DE10. That's right here in the middle, this one right here. That doesn't include things like the USB hub. That doesn't include things like my keyboard dongle here, the Wi-Fi dongle that I've got here. It doesn't include the SD card you need to build one of these. This doesn't include the top I/O board that will give you something like the user I/O, which will give you the low latency serial port. It doesn't include the analog out. So this is without that top board, you won't be able to get analog and digital out. You can get analog just out of this with the direct video cable, but that's neither here nor there. With this one, you get your analog out. This is how you get RGB-S, and this is how you get VGA, and how you get component out. There's a sync on green, that sort of thing. And again, this one right here is specifically hooked up to a CRT in my small gaming arcade. I have it plugged into a 36-inch TV, and this is essentially my NES, my SNES, my Genesis, my TurboGrafx, my PC Engine, my Game Boy, all of that on a CRT. Fantastic little board. Next to this is my arcade machine, and my arcade machine also has one of these, which allows me to play a lot of the arcade boards that have been built. That said, again, I have to reemphasize that the Mr. Project isn't perfect. The cores, as much as people want to say that they are 100% perfect, they are not. There are always bugs still. They are not 100% perfect. It is not software emulation, it is hardware emulation. It is still a form of emulation. We have to put that out there. The Mr. FPGA project is still a derivative and a form of emulation. It is hardware emulation. It takes a lot more work, but it is better in the long run because we have better understanding of how the hardware was built so that we can get better software emulation. So again, you have to understand that these two are not fighting. It is not this versus this. It is this helps this out. This has helped this out. Without things like this and the MAME project and all that, people wouldn't be interested in doing this. Without the MAME project and emulation, you wouldn't have the ROMs, all the ROMs that have been created, so that these can be played on the Mr. Project. Without the past that is emulation and software emulation, the present FPGA wouldn't be where it's at now. And that's one thing that I have to really express. Now, Raspberry Pis have multiple uses, right? So you can put them into machines, build little boxes. The boxes can do all sorts of things like play all your retro games. You can also do things even that help out the Mr. Project. For example, this one is not a complete build, but this right here is a hat for a Raspberry Pi, so that you can do the MT32 project. And if you're familiar with that, this is what will then give you the bare metal emulation of a MT32 synthesizer, a MIDI synthesizer, so that you could plug this in through the serial right here, and plug it into your Mister right here, and get wonderful MIDI playback. You know, the PC cores, the X68000 core really benefits from things like that. And again, that is because of something like this. Essentially, you plug this in right here, plug it in right there, put your hat on it, on your cable, and you're good to go. Like, that's amazing. I think that's what we have to understand, that these are all tools. So let's talk about my RGB-Pi setup here. This looks like a monstrosity, but I promise you there is method to my madness. So if you're familiar with most Jamma PCB boards, right? Like, they're bare. They're more function over looks, and this is kind of what is going on here. I want to kind of bend this back this way, and you can see. So this is the Jamma RGB-Pi board that you purchased directly from them, and it comes pretty, you know, bare bones. You plug this into the GPIO of the Raspberry Pi, and that could be all you need to do, right? But for example, this is on a Raspberry Pi 4 running the new Alpha OS, and first off, I decided to go with a really big cooler because I wanted to go ahead and overclock the Pi as much as I can. That really helps with a lot of the Naomi games and the Atomic Wave games. And let's see here. So that was why this cooler is as big as it is. Most Raspberry Pis, of course, wouldn't have something this big. Second, they give you the option here. You want to power this from the fan, but of course, most of the time when you put a Raspberry Pi fan on here, it pulls the power from the GPIO. The nice part is if you look right there, I know that's messy solder. I need to clean that up a little bit, but it's mostly flux. But the idea here is you're given pads for ground, 5 volt, and 12 volt, and they do that on purpose. Basically, you can go ahead and put your own wires to those spots. So if you want to put a 12 volt fan on here, pull it from that 12 volt line, and you'd be good to go. I'm going 5 volt and ground, and these 2 pins right here, these 2 pins on the Jamma plug are ground. So I'm using these a lot for other things, and I'll show you what that one's for in a second. Yeah, once you've got this plugged in here, it breaks out to my fan. This edition monstrosity was something that they didn't design for, at least not this revision of the Jamma RGB-Pi. Is they didn't really know. Eventually, I'm guessing they might make a new revision where they have a pad here for it, so you don't have to solder right here to the fingerboard. But what that is composite sync, and that I just took a old splitter cable that I had just because it had a female RCA. But what this allows me to do is I can go ahead and plug up my I can plug in my GunCon 2, and the GunCon 2 requires composite sync, and that goes to show how well this works. Like, the latency and all of that is working pretty well with a GunCon. You plug in one end to the USB, and the other end of the GunCon 2 into here, and you get all the, with proper configuration, a lot of your light gun games work. Now, the other monstrosity here, again, you've got fan, I've got the composite sync attached to it, and then this cable that, I'm only using a few of the pins on them, so I've got it terminated right here. But the idea here is this is your Jamma plug. This is your kick harness for Jamma. So if you're familiar with the Jamma standard, by default, 3 buttons, 1, 2, and 3 buttons are mapped to the Jamma pin. Later on, when games started, using more buttons, like Street Fighter, you had your kick buttons, and so the name became called the kick harness. And the idea here is that for games like Street Fighter that were on the CPS-1, they would use a separate board. So this is the CPS-1 style board, so your other buttons would go directly plugged into this board. And this particular connector that was on probably the Street Fighter board or whatever. So the idea here is you take your Jamma harness, plug it into this, or this. This is the CPS-2. Everything Street Fighter Alpha, Alpha 2, Alpha 3, Marvel vs. Capcom, X-Men vs. Street Fighter. That was all CPS2. That uses this style harness, and so you would plug it into this, and that would give you your extra buttons. What this does is, this is a breakout board from a company called Arcanic, I think is what it's called. I'll zoom in right here real quick. There we go. It's Arcanic, Arcanic.com. And what's nice about this is this gives you screw terminals for bare wires, right? So player 1, button 4, 5, and 6, and then ground. Player 2, button 4, 5, and 6, and then ground. And what I've done is I've daisied my ground so I don't have to have another wire. So I basically attached this wire and this wire together to give me my grounds. So ground, ground, and then I pulled a wire from here. This red wire goes all the way to there, to ground. So essentially everything else, all of these wires are going to the pads or the spot here. And if you look, this is the kick harness spot. You'll see player 4, 5, and 6. I'm sorry, player 2, 4, 5, and 6, and then player 1, 4, 5, and 6. So once you got them wired properly, you set them up, and there you go. Essentially, you just plug this into your arcade machine and plug your kick harness into one of these two standards, because most cabinets will have this, and you'd be good to go. Now, one other thing is this board does also support Chamma, if you're familiar with that standard. So Chamma is it's short for Chinese Jamma, right? So in China, a lot of the boards, like the Pandora's box boards, and a lot of the kind of the replicas, the bootlegs, the pirate boards, whatever you want to say, they make it so that these cabinets don't require a harness, and they will take over some of the empty pins on here for extra buttons. Some of the ground pins will then be removed, and you can use them for Chamma. So you can use this for Chamma, if I'm not mistaken, as well. So if you have a Chamma, you select that, and the buttons will work by default as well. So if your harness is wired that way, where button 4, 5, and 6 are on the Jamma connector, some people like that because it's cleaner. You don't have to have a separate harness, but that's not the standard for real arcade boards. So if you were to plug in, for example, you actually had a Chamma wiring on your Jamma board, on your Jamma. If your harness was wired for Chamma and you plugged it into a board like a CPS board, and you tried to use your kicks, they wouldn't work. As a matter of fact, sometimes you get shorts, and you get it where you might be rapidly hitting a button, or there's just all sorts of wackiness happens because it's a ground pin. The board sees it as a ground pin, but you're now seeing it as it's now acting like a kick button. So I digress here. This is the best way to do it if you've got a cabinet that's already got a harness. This is not the cleanest way, of course. There are ways. You could buy an adapter that goes from this to a 6-pin and then plug it in directly. I chose not to do that because I like to use my cab for other things, like my Mr. Cade, which uses this on here. I really wish that the RGB-Pi team would add one of these connectors right here, or maybe sold me an adapter with a 6-pin to this so that I can use and plug it in. But it's nice that they give you the option that you can do all these things. And again, the Jamma board is more of a hobbyist board, or it's not as plug and play friendly as maybe their normal RGB cable, which is just a cable that goes from GPIO to SCART. But yeah, let's see how this performs. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and do some testing on my Astro City here. It is got a arcade monitor, a 15 and 25 kilohertz monitor, so it's a low and mid 29-inch. So it can't do 640 by 480, but it can do 480i pretty well. You'll see when I'm playing on it. But essentially, normally inside of this machine, I've got my Mr. Cade.
And there it is right there. And so there is the RGB Pi Jamma, and it's a little messy just so that I can show you, but usually I've got this nice and set up and it's tucked inside there. But as I said, there is my kick harness hooked up there, and then that yellow cord goes routed out to the side. I've got it right there so that I can plug up some gun cons. And then I've got some USB extensions that go into the Pi, and they are set up to go right there. So I can plug in the gun cons. Or I could plug in a fight stick or a gamepad for some other games. Basic Sega 1-player, 2-player Astro City layout. But yeah, that's pretty much it. So let me go ahead and get this set up and turned on, and I can show you the interface, and then we'll do some gameplay. All right, hopefully my audio is coming in okay. I'm recording with my mic on my phone. I want to try to get the audio from the machine and me, and it's just a mess. I would have to mix it. I didn't want to have to deal with that right now. That said, here we are. This is the interface to the RGB Pi. Obviously, when you boot it up, you're not going to have any games on here. I've already got this loaded up and ready to go just for demonstration purposes, but I kind of want to show you what kind of makes this a really good interface for an arcade machine. Or just in general, just a really low fuss, very low resource intensive operating system that just it's optimized is what it is. Right now, this is the OS 4.0. It's in alpha right now. This is the second alpha. It was just released here at the beginning of April, the second version of the alpha. So there's still some features that this is missing, like it is missing artwork and like scraper information. It will get the titles, but right now there isn't. The old operating system had more ability of like scraping work, and you're able to customize more the way that the ROMs are looked, the way that they were presented to you. But that said, it's still very lightweight, and this is a good representation of kind of how you get it to work. So right now you'll see here that there are favorites, which I've already added some because from my previous install. Light gun games, which is nice because this will kind of load up the light gun games that you've got here already in. You'll see them, and these will, with proper configuration, all of these will work properly with a GunCon 2. But before we go into the games, I want to show you kind of the menu options here. And the first thing that, the important part is this is a CRT right now. This is an arcade cabinet. And you'll notice that I do have this set to native. So Dynares is kind of one of the big important things about the Raspberry Pi 4. It's one of their engines for scaling to kind of get things to work properly in a CRT. But since I've got an arcade cabinet here, I set it to native, so it won't be doing any type of scaling. The next thing is the CRT type. You can choose arcade generic. Basically, that's a regular consumer set here. An arcade 15 kilohertz, an arcade low and mid, which is 15 and 25 kilohertz. And then you have a full-on tri-sync, 15, 25, and 31. So if this is like a VGA tri-sync, something like in a Naomi and a Blast City, something that's got VGA input, you could go to that, and you'll have the ability to kind of go natively to 640 by 480 p. And then of course there's a couple of other ones on here, things that are kind of off. From my understanding, is some of these sets have different ways of interpreting sync or interpreting RGB. The B&O, the Bang and Olufsen, I can never say that, Olufsen CRTs, those are also a little different. So it's got presets for those. The team for RGB Pi is based in Europe. I think it's Spain that they're based out of. So some of these are catered to machine, CRTs that aren't available here in the States. Here is rotation. So if you want to go Tate, which I will do another video on Tate games. I do have a CRT set up here in Tate with RGB so that I can show you the games for that, and that'll be another video. A screensaver and then video information is in here, so that's pretty cool. Sound, you'll see here that there's music playing in the background, and one of the things that you'll notice is this interface kind of matches this Astro C. It's got this Megatech theme, and that's one of the built-in themes. But I want to go ahead and show you some of those. Those are pretty neat. If I go to System here and go to Themes, again, this is really taking advantage of that pixel artwork. Since it is on a CRT, everything looks really clean. So I'll kind of go through these real quick. So you'll see here. So that's a kind of a 1942 option. I won't back out on each one of them, but there's the classic. This is one of the early themes that was available for the RGB-Pi. Classic Terra. This is another one that they've got here. Very nice and clean. This Doom one is really cool. These are part of the OS 4.0. You know, able to take ability of, you know, take advantage of some of the engine work that they did. So these are really cool. Kind of a Galaga themed one. Galaxian. And again, that themes the whole machine, so essentially all the menus will have all of these. And this one's nice because if you back out all the way, and again, you can turn a lot of these parts off, a lot of the theme sounds and all that if that bothers you. That's an IREM Kung Fu Master, which if you're familiar with Kung Fu on NES, that's what it's based off of. Nice Mario theme if you just want to have a fun Mario theme on your... And again, you'll see the sync is kind of weird on this one, so that's why there's flashing. I'll change it. The Megatech, that's the one that I use. It seems to be the most kind of clean for this machine. Micro Machines, they did a nice fun one. And then I like this Neon City one of my faves. This is an earlier theme as well. You can see at the top right up here this cable looking thing. That's because that's the GPIO pin out for the RGB Pi. That's for the console, not for the Jamma. Outrun is a really nice one. Tokyo Nights is a really nice one. And then, of course, Sonic. They did a nice Sonic one. But as you can see, there's music. You can turn all that stuff off. You can just make it nice and clean. But again, I'll go back to this one. This one's kind of least intrusive for me. It also has settings here for overclock. I do have my Pi overclocked. Like I mentioned, I do have a nice big heatsink with a fan on it, and there's a reason. If you turn on this overclock, it'll overclock the Raspberry Pi 4 to 1700. I actually went in and did some custom overclocking by adjusting the config text. And so if I go here to information, you will see here that I've got my Pi running at 2.2 gigahertz. So quite a big boost, but that's the reason I got that heatsink. That allows me to have less lag on Naomi. The Naomi and Atomic Wave games, because they are 3D, they are, you know, heavy. So let me go ahead and start playing some games here. Again, there's a lot of options in here. Emulation, you know, turn things on. Mapping, you know, turn on stereo. You can have stereo. My cab isn't set up for stereo. My speakers aren't set up on the Jamma harness. I need to do that. But you can set up stereo and then do out of the audio jack. And then from there, plug it into like a small amp. And then get those speakers, which I need to make that modification on it. User remaps, I have that turned on because that allows me to kind of set custom buttons per game if I want it that way, and then it'll save them. If not, it'll just keep all of the remaps that the system already has. Again, here you can set your Super Game Boy palette. A lot of different ones in here. That's fun. Your NES palette, if you're familiar with, you know, the type of palette that he's got. I'm a fan of the Sony PVM one. That's one of my favorite ones to use. I think there's a way that you can load your own, but I'm not sure here. Online. So this is another one real quick that I wanted to touch base on. I am logged into my, if you're familiar with Retro Achievements, it is a website you can create an account, and essentially it ties in with RetroArch And as you're playing some of these old games, you can unlock achievements, and you have like a scoreboard, and there are leaderboards as well now. And you will put your name, and your account will show up on there, and there is discussion on the Discord for RGB-Pi, and people are kind of like sharing their scores and playing games. So it's another way to kind of play. This also has net play. So if you wanted to set up a server and do some tunneling and play some online, there are ways of doing that too if you're familiar on how to do that. Network, it's got Wi-Fi. I'm connected here. And again, controls. Right now, because it's Jamma, it is using the Jamma harness, and it is set up for my 6 button here. And you can also do your light gun calibration here. And I will do light gun games on another video. I don't want to sit down and do that now. But again, that's pretty much it. There's, again, all sorts of things. Here, so I'm going to go ahead and play some games, and then you can tell me what you guys think.
Dolphin time! you do to my people, Alligator? That's a laugh. Captain Bucko's fixing to fry your scales, Negator. Better talk. Oh, the little furballs were taken to the planet Pug.
This particular game, Arcade Machine, she has achievements. So if you notice down there, it says 0 of 22 achievements on this one. So
Mission 1. Yo, Joe!
this game is running on a weird sync. So hold on, let me see if I can fix that. So again, this particular game, you can use a trackball. So I do have a trackball controller that I could plug in through USB on here, and give me this opportunity. Or if you've got a cabinet with a trackball and you want to configure it for that, I mean, this particular game is great for that because it's a pretty expensive board, if I'm not mistaken, to have, and it's not on the Mister yet. As you can see, it's a trackball game, but I mean, you can play it with a controller, but it doesn't, it's not the best experience. But the idea here is you have options. Ah. Oh, no. And of course, one of the big deals here is, while the Mr. Project is fantastic, you cannot play CPS3 on it as of yet. So being able to have things like Red Earth, for example, which again is not everyone's favorite game. Everyone just wants to play Third Strike, but I kind of have a fondness for this particular game.
No mercy. Attack.
Oh, God. Oh, man. Wow. Wow, I'm doing horrible. But there you go. And of course, it plays Third Strike. You can't show CPS3 games running properly on here without showing what Third Strike can do. And yeah, I mean, this particular game has achievements, so as I unlock them, they will get automatically uploaded to my account.
Welcome to the world of Street Fighter 3. Yeah, I'm familiar with that. Well, I got this one. Into the heat of battle. Go for it. Are you ready? Go! Final round. Engage.
Ah.
You win.
And of course, because Ultimate Mortal Kombat and Mortal Kombat games in general have kind of a funky resolution, the 54 hertz. I think you saw down here at the bottom. It's great to be able to play them on an arcade machine because you know. See if I can fix this flicker. Again, it's hard to capture these. I'm trying to, adjust the frame rate. Combos here. There we go. Anywho, Ultimate Mortal Kombat runs great. I mean, it looks great in person. It's hard to capture on, again, this is a CRT. It's running at the proper frame rate, the 54 hertz. There we go. And again, the list goes on and on. There are lots of games that you can play on here that obviously you can't play on the Mister because the Mister doesn't have all these cores available yet. But I mean, man, R-Type, Puzzle Bobbles. I mean, depending on the pack, you know, it can do quite a bit. So the Naomi, of course, I cannot leave without showing some Naomi, right? So let's show some. I mean, obviously, some Marvel vs. Capcom 2, right? And this is the Naomi version, not the Dreamcast version. So I haven't loaded a proper save on here yet to unlock everybody. I do have one. So now this is running an interlaced 480, and it looks phenomenal on here. And it's no flicker because it's a really nice high quality monitor. But
Capcom presents. Select your hero.
see, it's at a rock solid 60 frames. It's just kind of trying to end it. There we go. Again, no slowdowns, especially when you have it overclocked all the way to 2.2. I found that you do get some stutter if you don't overclock it, so that's something that you should do. Even some of the graphic intensive, when I say graphic intensive, nowadays it's not that big of a deal, right? But I mean, again, remember you have to understand this is running off a Raspberry Pi. And it's kind of amazing that a single board computer this small and this cheap nowadays, right, can do this. So this is the arcade version of WWF at the time, WWF Royal Rumble, running on Naomi. I don't remember how to pin. Anyway, you get the point. And of course, games on Atomic Wave. Since Naomi works, Atomic Wave works just fine too. Turn the volume down a little bit so it doesn't sound so harsh, but And of course, after all that I've shown here, you do have, you know, you can play your NES games as well. You know, you wanna rock some Mario on an arcade cabinet, then by all means, you can totally do it. Super Nintendo games work just as flawless. You know, if you want to play some Super Nintendo, you know, just got the whole library on here. You know, nice, fast list form. Super Game Boy works great here. I mean, you can do some. Here, we'll do some. Again, this is a great game to play on an arcade machine because it's actually a really, really good version of Donkey Kong. Kind of Inception going on here. Cab instead of a cab. Whoop! I got caught on that ladder there. Yep, some Super Game Boy there. And again, a lot of these games can already be played on the Mister, and including the fact that you now have a PlayStation Core on the Mister, then, you know, this isn't as special anymore. But the same thing goes here. I mean, if you want to play some PlayStation 3 games on here, you can totally do that as well. It supports them.
Round one, fight. Objective appeared. Round two, fight.
This right here is one of my favorite games to play on the cab, because this is a Dreamcast game. And it's better than the arcade version.
Namco. Welcome back to the
And it looks so good on here.
Astro versus Sovitia. Battle 1, fight!
Whoa! I lost that. Can't believe that.
Ask you, final battle, fight! This victory strengthens the soul of Astro. You win!
Well, there you have it. That is an hour and 15 minutes of footage, or at least including all that intro stuff, kind of just the explanation of what the device is, of me just kind of showing games and showing what it can do. Again, it can do all of the other things. It can play CPS2, CPS1, Pac-Man, Donkey Kong, all of that stuff. But so can the Mister. So, I mean, if you're familiar with the way it feels on the Mister, it's going to feel pretty similar. I have had the RGB-Pi in my Astro for a while now, and I haven't hooked up my Mr. again. Like, I haven't put it back on. Not because I haven't, felt like I need to. Like, there's lots of things that I like to play. I have my Mister on my TV. But on the cab, there's so many games that I want to play that aren't on Mister. I like a lot of beat-em-ups. I like a lot of the Konami games. And being able to use the RGB-Pi, and the latency is so low, the feeling of an actual arcade cabinet on a CRT. I mean, I don't have a Time Sleuth. I don't have a way to kind of test the exact feeling. I am not... I'm not as much in the fighting game community as I used to be. I have lots of sticks that I used to build. But when it comes down to the feeling of some of these games like Ultimate Mortal Kombat and the CPS3 games like Third Strike, they feel fantastic. Like they're just as responsive as they would be me playing them on my Dreamcast or playing them at the arcade. I would have to have an arcade board, a CPS3 arcade board here to compare them with, to get a feel for that lag, get a feel for how what the what are the inputs. But I can't afford a CPS3, and I can't afford a lot of the arcade games that I was playing. A perfect example is Golden Axe. The Golden Axe board is an expensive board. It's kind of a rare board. You can't really find it much in the US here. The SegaSonic, the Hedgehog board is almost impossible to find here in the US as well. As a matter of fact, I don't think it ever came out in the US. I think it was just Japan only, but I might be wrong there. And again, Naomi's, they're not that expensive. You invest, $200 $300 on a Naomi, you can do the Raspberry Pi net boot and kind of get all those games on there as well. And so there's nothing wrong with that either. You can totally do that. But this one system, I mean, the price of a Raspberry Pi and the price of an RGB-Pi Jamma board, and that's it. I think it was $45 for the Jamma board, and then another $50 depending with chip shortage and whatnot for a Raspberry Pi 4. So under $100 give or take, and including SD card and whatever else. Also, the RGB-Pi supports external hard drives, so I do have a 64 gig USB stick in there for my ROM, so that I can, for right now, since the operating system is in alpha, there is no auto update. Once it comes out of alpha and it's in a final release, we should be able to see the web auto update work. Just by going to system update, it'll update the operating system, and you can have ROMs on the SD card if you want. It'll also support putting things on something like the RetroNAS. You can load your ROMs off of there as well. There's all sorts of options. If you're familiar with RetroArch and remember what you can do with what you can do in RetroArch, then this is it's a great option. I mean, is it perfect? I don't know, but I have no frame of reference otherwise. Like, I don't have a lot of these boards, and the
the big sell for me is being able to play some of these games, not just on a TV or being able to play them on an LCD. It's being able to play them on an actual arcade cabinet with actual arcade buttons through a Jamma harness without having to install like a PC and a whole front end interface. This is a very lightweight and a great operating system. And again, please go follow them. Go check out RGB-Pi. Go check out what it can and can't do. Again, it is limited, of course, to the hardware, and a Raspberry Pi 4 is only limited, so you're not gonna be able to see like GameCube and all of that. But I mean, PlayStation is great on a CRT. Game Boy, and all your basic consoles, anything that a Raspberry Pi 4 can run. The fact that Naomi runs as well as it does is amazing. The developers, the Flycast core is just absolutely phenomenal. I can't believe how clean it runs. Again, you saw the footage for Soul Calibur, which is again one of my favorite. Power Stone works fantastic on there as well. You want to load up any of the Konami, beat 'em ups like The Simpsons and Sunset Riders. All those work just great. I mean, you saw Bucky O'Hare, which is basically the same board. What else? You name it, you can try it out. It's got all sorts of things, as well as Tate. And again, next time on the next video, I will show you. I'll have my Tate TV with RGB, and I will show you the other, because I have two. One is for Jamma, and one is the SCART one, so you can plug it in through SCART right into a TV, or if you want to go to an upscaler, you can do that too. But I mean, at that point, why would you, right? You could just use the Raspberry Pi without this interface, or you can use your Mister. Again, thank you so much. If you want to see more, please leave comments below. Like, subscribe. I'm gonna keep trying to crank out this much content, more content like this. They take so much longer to film and kind of capture and really try to come up in my brain with some of the information. Again, I know I ramble. I try to write some of this stuff down, but then I forget to write down what I want to talk about, so then it just kind of spits out. So that's why you'll see lots of sporadic mind spewing during the gameplay. So please feel free to skip around. I'll try to add chapters. Again, I'll put some links in the description below on the hardware that I'm using, where to purchase, etc. You should see also the links in the video as well, regarding some of the hardware that I used. And yeah, thanks so much. Take care, everyone.